Welcome into Rounding the Bases.
Round the bases. Everybody knows Joe Goldberg. It's around the bases. Everybody knows Joe Goldberg.
Hey, everybody, welcome into another episode of Rounding the Bases, presented by Community America Credit Union, investing in you. I am Joel Goldberg. Shout out to my friends at Chief of Staff Kansas City, making connections that matter. If you are looking for a job, if you're looking to hire someone, if you're looking for just a resource, a sounding board, I can't say enough good things about them, in part just because they've got great culture within their office. I moved into a new office actually in April, and it's a great space. So check them out, chiefofstaffkc.com. I say this so often that it's all about connections, and the beauty of the networking world is that it has led me to a lot of interesting people. One of the best connectors that I have met in my 7 or so years of doing this is a guy by the name of Howie Fleischer. If you know him, you know he is unbelievable at connecting people, and that's how I get to my guest today. I'm joined by a civic leader who is leading the charge on a barrier breakdown. You can find him at the intersection of cause and initiative, leveraging strength in numbers to serve those in need. Meet Brett Fuller, Executive Director of the WellSky Foundation. As a champion for society's most vulnerable populations, he bridges the gap between care and accessibility, and in doing so amplifies the impact of whole person solutions that make potential possible once again, no matter the economic status. And I am happy right now to be joined by Brett Fuller, who we were brought together by Howie, which is always a great thing. I mean, I don't know if Howie's a guy that's going to hit the fast forward 30-second button or not. I don't know if Howie even knows how to do that. So let's throw him some love right now. First off, Brett, how are you? And second of all, we were sitting at a breakfast, me, you, and Howie. Then he ditched on us, and we got to hang out. But one of the best connectors, right?
Yeah, that's right. Howie's the greatest, and he is he's got a PhD in networking, and so it's great to reconnect with you. And I appreciate you having us on today, and I'm sure we'll have some laughs and share some good information.
No doubt about it. That was my shout out to Howie. Actually, he'll listen to the whole thing, but I just wanted to make sure that we send him some love. I love your story, and actually, I love all stories like this when there is a career pivot, because I think that when people make a 180, I don't know if it's a total 180 for you. I think it probably was in a lot of ways. That's not something that happens with the snap of a finger. And when people that have done really well in one thing and then go on to another, there's always a great story involved. How did you end up where you're at today? Because I know that this wasn't the initial path.
Yeah, after 30 years in the sports marketing world and doing things in Kansas City like the Sprint corporate sponsorship group and the sports architecture world, I was approached by the WellSky Corporation and their CEO, Bill Miller. They were looking for their first full-time paid employee to run the WellSky Foundation, which is the philanthropic arm of the corporation. So trust in seeing what WellSky, the corporation, had been doing for the last few years, trust in their leadership team and their commitment to making a difference in this community was a big part of my decision. But chip on my shoulder, to be honest, about Kansas City hometown pride and making this city better, kind of reflecting on some of my Sprint good old days where we had a lot of civic pride and trying to bring that mentality, to the WellSky Foundation.
Yeah, I mean, it's such, in many ways, there are a lot of parallels, I guess, to what you were doing before, but then yet it's such a different world too. Tell me about the parallels and the differences.
Yeah, so I used to wade in the shallow end of your world, sponsoring things like the Chiefs and the Royals and the NFL and hanging out with, we did a lot of athlete deals and things like that. And so it is a little bit, I haven't been on a plane for work in 18 months, so I'm not complaining about that after a heavy dose of airplanes in my career. I think the parallel and the thing that's allowed this to transfer so easily is the networking, the relationships, learning, listening, storytelling, At the end of the day, it's what you started with. It's about the people you know and the trust and circling yourself with good people. That's made it a really easy transition. I'm not an engineer. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a lawyer. What I bring to the table is, I guess you would say, interpersonal skills, and those are transferable. But fortunately, being a hometown guy here in Kansas City, essentially my whole life, picking right up, but in a more of a from the heart, giving civic perspective, it's been a pretty easy transition in the last 18 months.
I think that's interesting though, because you live in a certain world for 30 years, and then while so much of it is transferable, while there are parallels, it's also a totally different world, for I would imagine better and worse, right? You're not hopping on a plane, you're home with the family more. But I also think, I don't think that there's so much purpose to what you're doing now. Not that there wasn't before. I think we all need to find purpose, and when we find purpose in what we do, like I could find purpose in a 10-0 loss in a baseball game if I'm looking hard enough, and so, but sometimes that job, it's just sitting right there in front of you. You don't even need to think about that purpose, and I sense right now that's what you're staring at every single day, an incredible purpose.
Yeah, it's funny, Jules. I've never slept better in my life than when at the end of the day, when you're helping other people and you're making an impact and you're affecting real change that is visible, and spending time with those vulnerable communities and literally understanding what your dollars are doing, the impact you're making. And I love fundraising now. I used to ask people for money and there was always a little bit of guilt to it. Now I'll ask people for money all day long because I know exactly where it's going. And if you can rob Peter to pay Paul, and you can see the impact you're making. So yeah, it's been tremendously rewarding. I used to dabble, I was on the board of Big Brothers Big Sisters, a lot of volunteering, Special Olympics, things like that. But to really be able to directly 40, 50 hours a week make a difference and an impact, and knowing everything you do and you see the results, it's very gratifying.
I want to get into what the foundation is, the mission, and everything you're doing in a moment, but I want to set it up, even though this is, I think, a totally different world. I think there's something about the spirit and the heart. I think that comes from having a child, having a son with Down syndrome, in terms of serving, in terms of impact. And I'm curious the perspective in being the father to Jack, how if at all that shapes not just who you are. I know it shapes who you are. Our kids shape all of us, but how that shapes that philanthropic spirit.
Yeah, when you live in this world, it's like a special club. Having a special needs child, you see firsthand the vulnerable population, and there's a million different definitions of population. In my case, it's Down syndrome. In other cases, it could be mental health issues. It could be homelessness, poverty, whatever, addictions, things like that. But you definitely look through a different lens when you see 24/7, 365, the challenges, the hurdles, and I'm not talking social economic barriers. I'm just talking, developmental barriers. So it was a huge motivation when I was approached about this just job and this opportunity, is to get off the sidelines and get in the game. And I've had some success in sales and business development in my life. And so, I figured, why not put this towards a mission? But I think, I won't speak for you, but the older we get, the more we start to look for purpose, and maybe getting on the right side of the ledger, whatever the case may be. But it is a purpose and a drive and motivation to make a difference when you're living it 24/7 in a different kind of context.
So you're getting a chance to do that every single day with WellSky Foundation, and I felt the energy when we went to breakfast, the amount of joy you have in this. And Look, if you didn't enjoy fundraising and that piece of it, like I hate fundraising. I'm not good at it. Maybe I'm good at it. I'm just not comfortable with it. Probably not good at it either. But there are people that are good at it, that are comfortable with it, that have that gift. When you match it with a purpose that means so much to you, I think there's a lot of magic there. Tell me about what you guys are doing with the WellSky Foundation.
Yeah, it's really simple. There's a lot of challenges in our communities with those vulnerable populations. Our mission literally is to improve the quality of life for vulnerable populations by removing social barriers to improve health and wellness and recovery. So we talk a lot about social determinants of health, how those impact somebody's life, whether it's safe housing. Our pillars are housing, transportation, isolation, and food insecurity. It's amazing how those social determinants impact a person's well-being and health, much more actually than actual health care. So if you're a senior citizen and you're stuck at home by yourself and you're very isolated and you don't want to guilt people in giving you a ride to your doctor, or you ignore certain symptoms, they bubble up and they get so bad your hospital stay lasts longer, or maybe you never make it to the hospital. Isolation is a really a big problem in the healthcare world as our baby boomers get older, and the generation, we're getting older as a society. So isolation is one of those big things that we attack head on as one of our main pillars. But that's our goal, is to, unfortunately, a lot of people are affected socioeconomically around these social determinants of health, and we're trying to do our little part. So all of our fundraising, we turn that around and we do grants. We consider them large grants. Maybe other organizations don't. They're in the $50,000 to $100,000 range. We don't do sponsorships and things like that. We're looking for nonprofit 501c3 partners that have mission alignment, and not too big, not too small, where we can make an impact and we can see what we're doing. Because for a young foundation, we're coming up on our 5th birthday. It's nice to have testimonials and stories as we're out talking to new people, to literally be able to say, here's an example of the impact we're making. Here's an example of the impact we're making. And thank God we're able to do that every day, and our testimonials are growing and getting bigger, and it's helping.
Let's touch on that a little bit. And I don't want to ask. Well, I'm going to ask you to speak for Bill, but because you know his story, and he obviously has a very successful company with WellSky. But how did this all come about? I think you touched on something, and I think we talked about it at breakfast too, that there are some mega companies here in town and big time names that can hand out those $100,000, those $1 million, whatever it is, checks and grants and all of that, and those are transformational. I think there's a story here too about, I'm not saying David Goliath, but somewhere in the middle where you could still make massive impact. How did this all come about for Bill?
Yeah, so as the story goes, he took over this company about 7 years ago as the CEO, and the mission of the WellSky Corporation is, through medical software, to help lower costs, to provide medical records and efficiencies in the post-acute care world. But when he thought about starting the foundation, it was really, where does the rubber meet the road? Where can we actually impact those vulnerable communities directly? So our foundation was set up. We're funded by our colleagues, which we call teammates, and then we have a gala and a golf tournament. So a third of our funding, if not more, comes from our internal teammates. And there's a really good alignment with the foundation and the corporation when it comes to health and wellness. Corporation's doing it through medical software. The foundation is doing it through tangible gifts, with a highly organized process to selecting those grant recipients. But at the end of the day, Bill had a vision of making a difference in our community, making an impact in our community. And I'm not even putting his words in his mouth. I've heard him say he's much more worried about our reputation as giving back, helping good citizens that care about our community more than every single person in Kansas City knowing about the ins and outs of our medical software. If he had to pick a reputation, it would be much more of giving, impact, and being there and helping vulnerable communities.
And I think it's interesting too when you start talking about internal. I mean, you can go out there and raise money. That's the bigger stuff that we're talking about. But there's an element, a massive element of storytelling to everything that you're doing. I think that's probably true for all of us in some way or another. You don't need to go on camera and be a storyteller if you're selling, if you're raising money, whatever it is. But I think it's interesting, the internal piece of that too, because there is buy-in from this rapidly growing medical software company. There is buy-in for those employees. Tell me about that, because, you know, we talked about purpose. That's staring you in the face, as I said, every single day. But how about the buy-in for those that work for this company and getting involved?
Yeah, I really feel like I have 2,600 bosses, the employees of the WellSky Corporation, because I'm out there representing them as the face of the foundation. I think one of the positives that we're seeing in society and the younger generation, when they're interviewing, doesn't matter if it's WellSky or any company, they're asking, what are you doing to give back? What is your community engagement? What are your philanthropic endeavors? So I think there's an appetite from, particularly a younger generation, but everybody, wanting to give back and do more, and to have somebody. I oversee our volunteer efforts. Constantly people calling, email me, and stopping by my office here at WellSky asking, when are we volunteering next? How can I volunteer more? And then we have town hall meetings where we will have grant recipients. We just did this 2 weeks ago with Peach Garden, came in and said, here's exactly what your gift is going to do for us and the impact you're going to make. Last town hall, we had a woman come in from Amethyst Place who had been through their program, received their services, now actually works at Amethyst Place. So hearing the testimonials, particularly firsthand from those, kind of a corporate term, but end users, that are benefiting from the funds and grants of organizations like the WellSky Foundation, hearing directly from them makes a huge impact with our teammates, makes them feel good about what they're doing. When we're asking for a, one-time gift, it could be a 50-50 raffle or, paycheck deductions. I think one of the things is total transparency and letting our teammates see firsthand and understanding where dollars are going, how they're being dispersed amongst 4 pillars and in alignment with our mission, and then the mission of those that end up with our funds. But hearing from those folks, whether it's Amethyst Place or Peach Garden or, any testimonials, really resonates with, makes people feel good about what they're doing with their money, and they trust us. You got to be a good steward of people's dollars, because every dollar matters to people.
And I think what you're saying about the younger generation, I want to get off track just for a moment here, because it's fascinating to me that this younger generation, just in general, I'm labeling a little bit, seems to be more interested in causes, purpose, impact. I'm not saying that our generation, Brett, wasn't interested in that, but I just think it's interesting that at a time where it's harder to be a 20-something or a 30-something than it was for us, where it's harder to make money, where you have all the, just everything in the world with social media and mental health and all that it feels like there's a greater purpose or a desire to have a mission, that it's not just about collecting a paycheck at a time where money is so much harder to come by. I sense you're noticing the same thing.
Yeah. We could both probably admit, never in my career, and I haven't had a lot of jobs, but did I, in an interview, ask, what causes do you give to? What are your pillars of your foundation? I mean, I interviewed at Sprint many, many, many years ago. I did not ask in my interview, full transparency about the Sprint Foundation and their causes.
Yeah.
So I don't know what that says, about different generations, but there is a lot of positive interest from our generation. But, people that retire get more involved with philanthropic activities. And I sense, from the people that get involved here, it's a very diverse. It's not like our 20 somethings are the only one volunteering. It's across the board. But I think, to your point, whether it's entry level positions or younger folks, it is a determinant in which job they select.
Yeah. It's I think very encouraging, and I suppose everybody that's at our age now, just like those before us, say there's still hope out there, that type of thing, right? Like as if we didn't have it all figured out either. And this younger generation, they're all different, but this younger generation they're motivated in ways that I think is different than what we were. And that's generational. So I want to get back a little bit to the work that you're doing, because I know some of the numbers that I've seen, and you touched on a little bit of this, but I'll throw some of this out there because they're daunting numbers. You talked about inpatient hospitals. 30-day inpatient hospital readmission rate among homeless persons is 50.8%. Half of them are going back in 30 days. Now, how are they getting there? Transportation is an issue. These are things that you can do. Every year, 3.6 million individuals do not receive necessary health care due to transportation barriers. So how do you get the health care if you can't get there? And then it gets so bad and you do get there and you got to keep going back and back and back. So how do you chip away at all of this?
Yeah, it's a great question. And one of the things we realized early on, and I think Bill realized early on, is this niche and our mission, our pillars, is not one that gets a lot of attention, unfortunately. There's a lot of great causes out there, single disease causes, things like that, but you've just hit on a couple of ours. And I think what we try to do is we try to make an impact. We don't try to boil the ocean all at once. And, when we work with organizations like Care Beyond the Boulevard here in Kansas City that are providing medical services, taking medicine to the streets and going to homeless camps and going to homeless shelters and providing those services, we think that's God's work and that we can contribute that. We donated $100,000 to Care Beyond the Boulevard, and we were able to purchase them a new van, which allowed them to expand their reach. We purchased 2 EKG machines for them so that when they are providing those services, that they have the technology and the equipment needed. But, in the homeless community, they don't have a doctor. They're not doing their annual visits and their annual checkups. It gets extremely severe before they're getting attention. So Care Beyond the Boulevard has a big old green bus, getting ready to get a new one. And they have volunteer doctors and nurses, and several times a week they're going out and they're providing service, to those homeless folks. So I feel really good. Is there a lot of work to be done? Yeah, but are we making a dent? Absolutely. And we feel like the impact we're making. We hear stories from the doctors and nurses about using that EKG machine. And we volunteer with Care Beyond the Boulevard, and we were serving food, we were helping, so we're not just an ATM. We're out there volunteering with Care Beyond the Boulevard and also trying to help provide services to that same homeless community. Isolation is the same way. We've given to organizations like the Northland Shepherd Center, who are totally focused on wraparound services and care to the elderly and the senior citizens. Things like that. So I just think it's really important to do what you can and not feel a defeatist attitude there's still homeless people not getting services or elderly not getting isolation, but we're doing what we can. And we are, in our small way, making an impact.
And those victories, you could call them huge victories because ultimately I think they are. they may feel small in some ways because there's so much work to be done, but that has to be the greatest feeling when you hear from those docs, or even some of the homeless population that has been affected, and maybe you get that thank you or you hear that story. It has to be as gratifying as anything you've done.
Yeah, it's quite emotional. I think it's been more emotional the last 18 months than maybe the 18 years prior. Seeing when you give somebody a check for $100,000 and you realize that may allow them to continue their mission, or, the appreciation. I had one of my 3 children volunteering with me at a food bank, handing out, or, serving food and to a homeless group. And I asked my 16-year-old daughter, what impact did that make on you? She goes, I could not believe how nice they were to me. So hearing your own kid realize these people are just like you and me, they just caught some bad breaks and they've been dealt an unfortunate hand, but with our effort, we being Kansas City residents, we can make a huge difference.
Yeah. So well said. All right, I want to get to the baseball themed questions, and it might be a repeat of what you just said. I don't know, but in your career now, which has taken that 180 in the best of ways, what's the biggest home run that you've hit?
Yeah, this is going to be a little redundant and maybe a bit obvious, but the leap of faith I took after 30 years, and trust me, I was comfortable. I knew, 75% of the Power 5 ADs in the country and all these professional sports teams. With that said, I just had a tug and a pull at my heart, knowing this was the right move. And so it's been a home run. Like I said, I have some stress, golf tournament coming up and filling the seats at a gala, but you sleep better knowing that you're making a difference, and it's not going to, billionaires in the sports world. Sometimes it's an interesting transition for me. It's totally been a home run, and I feel no looking back.
Yeah, that's the ultimate home run. It really is. How about a swing and a miss along the way, and what did you learn from it?
A swing and a miss. Well, there's personal and professional. We'll stick to professional.
Good move.
One time I took a job with an organization, a startup, because it was funded by an owner of an NBA team and a Major League Baseball team. I was like, well, this will be kind of cool, going to work for, somebody like that. And I was there, I don't know, it must have been about 18 months. And the owner decided he was going to go a different direction. He shut down the business. On a Friday afternoon, 50, 60 people found themselves out of work because a billionaire decided to go a different direction with his tinkering, ventures. And so swing and a miss, on something that seemed sexy and, exciting and deep pockets supporting it. I think the learning is just, ask different questions when you're making a big decision, and don't get caught up in some of the, maybe it's a title, maybe it's the company, maybe it's the owner or the glory. I probably asked better questions for a couple jobs subsequently since that experience.
That's something that we all can learn from, and certainly the younger generation. I mean the 20-somethings, the 30-somethings. I don't suppose there are a whole lot of teenagers listening right now. Maybe yours is, I don't know. But and look, even for those of us that are, I was going to say those of us that are in our 40s, that's cute. But I think that there is something there to what you just said. Two things to me that stand out in that swing and a miss. One, be more inquisitive, be more curious. There's no harm in that. It only makes you better. Two, we don't always need to chase the shiny objects. Sometimes the shiny objects will appear for us and they are the right fit, but don't do it just because it's that.
Yeah, exactly.
Last one on the baseball theme question, small ball. What are the little things that add up to big results for you?
I kind of hit on this as well, so I apologize for being a little redundant, but memorizing people's names, following up with people, staying in touch with people, being authentic. My wife would be the first one to tell you it drives her nuts that she thinks I'm friends with the first person I've ever met in my life and everybody that's come along the journey since. But when that's the business you're in and you enjoy it and you're an extrovert. But there's good and bad ways of doing that. And when I mentor, grad students, undergrads, follow up, stay in touch, be authentic. It's not hard to be successful. Work harder than everybody else and do what you say you're going to do. And those little things fall through the cracks with a lot of people.
That's golden rule stuff too. And it's amazing. Like we shouldn't really even have to talk about it, but because it falls through the cracks so much, and which tells me that, look, it's, I don't think that's intentional on a lot of people's part. I think that they get pulled in different directions and you get desperate sometimes and you forget that you can't replace authenticity. You really can't. And it's a great rule to live by. Be where you say you're, be who you say you're going to be, where you're supposed to be, when you're supposed to be there, and be who you are, and start with that in the hard work piece. And, I think about that all the time with TV. How the heck am I doing this after 29 years? Oh, we think you're good at that. Maybe some people do, some people don't. But the one thing I know I can control every single day is showing up and being who I say I'm going to be. So yeah, that's just that's my little add-on to the small ball piece for you, because I think it applies to anyone and everyone.
Well, don't forget those little things, right? You hinted, we've talked about, hey, we'll grab a beer after the season.
Yep.
When you're dealing with me, you can guarantee there'll be communication in October after the season to have that beer, and I look forward to it. And, those are little things that people need to do, because there's a lot of good people out there, and, networking is fun if you look at it the right way, and you only get better from, the more people and the more professionals and experience you get around yourself.
I haven't met your wife, but if she's going to speak like mine, she's going to be like, who are you going for a drink with today? How do you know him? Wait, you only met him once and you want, but no, I mean, I think we're collectors of people in the best of ways. And that's a great way to live. And you don't have to be an extrovert, by the way, to do that either. That doesn't mean that there are days that I don't want to be introverted and get away from the cameras and all that stuff as well. Okay. I off on another tangent. Let's wrap it up with 4 final questions. I hinted, or I brought him up before, but I want to do it again, because the positivity and energy from young adults or kids for that matter with Down syndrome is something. You and I talked about this, because I'm lucky enough to call Rex Hudler's son Cade my friend, and he is, if I could get a piece of him every single day, I would be better for it. How is that with you and Jack?
There's a reason why Rex and Cade and I are all friends, and Jack too. We've got great pictures with the 4 of us, and Jack makes everybody around him happier and better and appreciate the little things. Jack's trying to, tie his shoes or, small things like that. He'll never be able to drive. He appreciates life more than you and I do. And there's something to be learned from that. But yeah, absolutely. Everybody around him benefits from his positivity, and there's a reason why Cade and Jack are friends.
I will tell you, and I'm not saying anything that's secret, but anytime I see Rex down, maybe it's a bad game or something like that, and I don't get that down after bad games. Like, we're all wired differently, and I'm there to broadcast win or lose. Obviously, the winning's better. HUD's not wired that way, that, and I've seen it. I just saw it already earlier this year on a bus ride after a tough game, and they happen. They're going to happen a lot throughout the year. And once he gets on that FaceTime with Cade, oh man, like everything lifts and the world is better. So it just, and I've told you too, my wife, program manager at the Golden Scoop, every day that I go in there, I'm not in there enough, but with baseball now, but any chance I get to go in there, I'm really not going in to say hi to my wife. Sorry if she's listening right now. She's probably not, but I'm going in there to soak in that positive energy, and it's the greatest. So
if everybody went to Golden Scoop to start their morning, everybody's lives would be better.
There's no question about it. So the second question, I had an unrelated second question, but I'll make that third. The second question is back to WellSky Foundation too. I've got to imagine, and we talked about it a little bit, that you get that same feeling from the work that you're doing, and how you would describe what it feels like, not just for you, but those WellSky employees, when you talk to them, to feel that difference.
There's nothing better, makes your heart warmer than giving. And it doesn't matter, you may reluctantly do something, giving of your time or giving of your funds, but when you're done, I don't know what's wired about human beings, even if it's, at the red kettle at Christmas time, you're like, oh no, there's the red kettle. But then you give them $5, you feel really good about yourself for a few moments. When you go volunteer and you give your time instead, when you're driving home, you feel better about yourself, your life, and the world. And so what we've found with teammates and the people that we come in contact with at the foundation, that giving really does make everybody's lives feel better. And when you can also share the impact on the other end, it's kind of win-win.
Well said. Again, all right. Third question. This will be, I don't know, that's lighthearted. It's just off topic because I love to find out little things about people. 4-time letter winner in track at KU. To give me, I like to do this with athletes or former athletes or whatever you want to call yourself. If you still consider yourself an athlete at this point, you're better than me. And let's be honest, I wasn't really an athlete back then either. So you've got that above me. But what was the scouting report, so to speak, on a young Brett Fuller as a track athlete?
This pretty easy. My senior year, I anchored the mile relay. And I told the coach, I'm like, Coach, I'm really curious. I'm not the fastest split. And he goes, yeah, but you're a stubborn SOB. And if it's tied coming down the home stretch, nobody's beating you. So track's a good, I was probably one of the faster white guys you would have known if we were friends in that area. I was a little blessed by that.
That sounds like Greg Sutherland.
Yeah. He was always a little bigger than me. Track guys don't hit the weight room.
No, but Hud always talks about how he was born blessed with speed, and that was a big part of his game.
Yeah, you can't coach speed. You can't coach height. You can do some things to make it better, but it was a good way to spend 4 years of college is running around in circles and fun travel around the country with track. KU relays were just last weekend, so I got to see a lot of teammates and staying in touch. So
that's good stuff.
Don't look the same, but it's still in there somewhere. Let's
wrap it up with this walk-off then, that in the spirit of that stubbornness, and also I think with the thought of track and running circles, that's what you're doing right now, and we could call it more a marathon or even more so, because it's going to keep going and going and going. Big picture for WellSky Foundation. You still have some years left. You're not going to be doing this 20 or 30 more years, but let's say over the next 5 to 10 years, do you have some big lofty goals?
Yeah. This year we'll raise about 1.2 million. And I mean, I hate to break it down to numbers and things like that, but when we're able to give $2 or $3 million a year to Kansas City based nonprofits, I can just envision everything we're doing now, but 4X, 5X, 6X, and the impact we're making, owning some programs like what we're doing with Pete's Garden and their Kids Feeding Kids program and things like that. I think our presence in the city will be tremendous. Our volunteerism will be through the roof. And my goal in not even that many years is to help the WellSky Corporation brand and reputation be that of one of a strong, proud civic leader when defined by giving back and helping the vulnerable.
So much impactful work that has been done, that will continue to be done at the WellSky Foundation. I'll have this in the show notes as well, but if you want to learn more, wellskyfoundation.org. Their gala later in the year. It's the way it sounds, WELLSKY, wellskyfoundation.org. Brett, so much fun, such an important conversation. Again, a shout out and a thanks to our friend Howie Fleischer, and I really appreciate you spending time with me on Rounding the Bases, and we'll grab that beer in October.
All right, thanks, Joel. Have a good one.
It's around the bases. Everybody knows Joe Goldberg.